Welcome to Politics Not Included, where we get to know the person, not their policy. We're creating a space to have real conversations with your elected officials and election candidates to get to know them as a person first. We're hoping these conversations will make it easier to approach and engage your local leadership. Now, before we get started with today's episode, I have a couple of ground rules to cover as always. The first is, Politics Not Included is hosted by the Transparent Campaign Initiative. And in the spirit of transparency, these episodes will be published without being edited. And we're doing this to keep this platform neutral and authentic to all of the guests that we have on the show. Now, what that means for you as a listener or a viewer if you're on our YouTube channel is that you may witness or hear longer pauses than anticipated or some bloopers or stumbling over words. And that's because you're watching or listening to this conversation as if it were live. You're hearing the whole thing in its entirety. And I'm excited to get to share these conversations with you in a true and authentic form. And that leads me to rule number 2, that as you're watching or listening to this, if you have any comments that creep up in your head that if you were sitting in this room with us, you may not have the confidence to say to our face, or you may not feel like the best human being if you did, I'm going to ask you to keep that in your head and out of the comments. And that's because we're just trying to have conversations to get to strengthen our community and to build each other up rather than tear each other down. And in order to do that, I think we need to keep the comments kind. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's get this show started. Today we're joined by Peter Oppelt. Peter is an agile product owner for Travelers Insurance. He's also a current Manhattan City Commissioner who is seeking re-election in November. Peter, welcome to Politics Not Included.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here and to get to know you a little bit better and dive into some of your background. As I was preparing for this, I kind of was looking into your previous careers, and you have kind of a dynamic background that I'm excited to break down a little bit, from starting in the Army to being an economist and a data analyst.
Yeah.
So let's start first with where are you from originally, and then what roles did you have in the Army?
Yeah, so I grew up in Colorado Springs. I moved there when I was less than a year old, so I don't get to be a native of anywhere. I grew up there, joined the Army right after high school as an ammunition specialist, and I did that for 5 years and then went to school for explosive ordnance disposal, and that's a year-long school between Virginia and Florida. Finished that up and came to Fort Riley. So I dodged coming to Fort Riley when my first unit moved here, and apparently it was just destiny for me to end up here, and I haven't left.
Yeah, is EOD big at Fort Riley? Because I've met several other people.
No, it's not really big anywhere. Okay. There were a couple hundred of us when I was there. It's probably, I think they only have 2 companies there now, so probably about 100 people. And
is your time at Fort Riley why you settled down in Manhattan?
Yeah, I never would have came here otherwise.
Same. It's an area you come to, and then you kind of fall in love with, and then decide to come back to. Very common story here. So after you retired from the Army, you then completed a bachelor's in economics. Mm-hmm. So why economics, and what was that transition like?
Well, I didn't retire. I just did an ETS, end of service. So just separated normally.
The terminology is
gotta get the acronyms right, but it's okay. So I just don't get to shop at the PX. So I actually started as a mechanical engineering major, and I kind of joke that the College of Engineering is like the pre-economics major, because a lot of econ majors start in engineering and then they go to economics. You can still make it very mathy and analytical. Mm-hmm. It is a little bit less academically rigorous, and I was able to use more transfer credits, so it only took me 3 years to finish my bachelor's instead of 5.
Yeah, so the numbers, you're a numbers guy. And then you started your career as an economist, and then have had several different jobs. Like, what kind of jobs have you had?
Yeah, so started at the Kansas Department of Revenue, basically analyzing tax legislation, and we would run simulations with previous year's tax return data and be able to kind of model each individual tax return. Say if they wanted to change the tax brackets, we could take everybody's income and deductions and stuff like that and figure out how much their tax liability would have been, and then figure out the change and the overall financial impact of the state. And that was really, I enjoyed that job. It was a very long drive to Topeka.
Yeah, because you were living in Manhattan at that time. Yeah, that's
and I had an opportunity to move to the Kansas Department of Agriculture, so it was just very easy move, and did that for a while. That was I did again a lot more analysis of how agriculture impacts Kansas, and I was on the legislative team to kind of talk about when the legislature was in session, see what kind of impacts we might see from economic related or agricultural related legislation. And then decided I kind of wanted to go into the private sector to be a little bit more technical. Then there were some of the government role that wasn't really in my skill set. So that was in 2020, and I worked for a company out of Indiana, and worked there for about a year and a half, and then got the job at Travelers about 3 years ago. So I've been working from my home for 5 years now, and haven't looked back. It's
a pretty good gig. My husband also works from home,
yeah.
And so it's kind of nice to text him and be like, "Hey, can you take this out of the freezer or something?" You're always there. It's nice. So in those first two roles, were you working alongside lawmakers, or did you have experience collaborating?
I didn't, not like directly. We would have to answer some questions from time to time, but I was definitely more in the back end, because it's executive branch versus legislative branch, and we try not to do too much commingling there, but still, produced information to try and give to lawmakers to give them a better picture.
And what is an agile product owner?
So basically I write, I basically translate what the business users of data are asking for, and translate it for our data engineers so that they can do the work, and then kind of manage all of those different projects that we're working on and prioritize them to work on them in the right order.
So then you decided to run, the first time you ran for office was in the 2023 election cycle, and you were elected to a 2-year term. So what 2 years ago made you want to decide to run?
So it was actually before that. I think in the 22 midterms, I saw a statistic, something like 70 or 75% of our state house races were unopposed. And it's that's very frustrating to me that we have so many people who, right or wrong, they're not having any kind of challenge to their service, and that means they're not really being held accountable. So I'm the type of person, I don't like to complain about something without being willing to be a part of the solution. So I had been, I had friends tell me that I would be good at it, but that's when I really started looking more into, okay, how can I do this? How can I be involved? And really, City Commission is the only one that fits with having a full-time job. Yeah. County Commission, they meet Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I think they might meet 3 times a week. I don't know, but it's you got to have a much more flexible schedule than I do, and then the state legislature is just out. That's a full-time job, even though they're only in session for 3 months, but it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of conversations with my wife and with people who had been serving or had served in the past, and just said, okay, I think I can do it, and then started talking around to folks. There was a local candidate workshop here at the library early in 2023, and met some folks through that, and then met some more people, and really then it just took off. And once I had the support then I knew that I would be able to at least run a campaign, because I had no idea what I was doing when I started. And I, still am trying to figure it out, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without help of a lot of people.
Yeah. How does that fit into, if you work full time, you kind of mentioned time commitment. What does a day look like where you're like Peter versus Peter, the city commissioner?
Well, so our agendas come out on Thursday afternoons. So, Friday afternoon, I have, Thursday evening, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to really kind of look over the agenda. Mondays, I usually shoot off a couple of emails with questions and things like that to staff, so that I can either get questions clarified or prepare staff, say, hey, I'm going to ask you this question in a meeting. I don't want you to look like an idiot, so bring enough information to be able to, and then, depending on how long the meeting is on Tuesday, we've been kind of fortunate the last several weeks. They've been right around an hour and a half, 2 hours. The longest we've had, I think, went all the way till 11. Those are hard.
Yeah.
They are exhausting, but it's worked. And again, like I said, working from home, I have a little bit more of a flexible schedule, and so I can take some time to do things like this, things like that. And my employer is also very supportive of my service, and so. I don't do things like on work hours or on work equipment, but it's a lot easier when I'm taking my lunch to answer some emails, things like that, than it would be if I were at a job.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you guys meet once a week?
Yep, every Tuesday. Unless we have a fifth Tuesday, then sometimes we'll cancel it, or we'll have maybe just a discussion session or something like that.
And then you're going through campaign number 2. How does this one look different than the first one?
Well, either good or bad, I have a record now, which, I have experience, which is probably my biggest benefit. I can much more fluently speak to the processes and the challenges that we face as a governing body, and I, do have my name out there a little bit more, so that's helpful. But I have also had to take stances on things in my votes, and so people may or may not like that, but I've always told people that you're not going to agree with everything that I do, but I'm more than happy to talk to you about why I did it. And I've found generally that people appreciate being open and honest more than they appreciate you promising that you're going to do whatever they want them to do.
Yeah, I'm going to hit on a couple of those points in a second before we move on. You're in a 2-year term. Manhattan, you can be elected to a 4-year or a 2-year term, right? Do you think 2 years is enough time in there to get adjusted, and are there benefits to a 2-year versus a 4-year term?
I'm still learning. I'm still learning a lot. Like last year, I was serving for 2 or 3 months. Well, I think we started the budget cycle around May or April, and it comes at you fast. And the city doesn't stop working because we have new commissioners, and you really have to learn a lot on the fly. So I think we got a lot of really good momentum going. We just hired a new city manager, so I really hope to have the opportunity to pursue a lot more things and build a stronger relationship with Danielle, our new manager. So 2 years, it's not enough to satisfy me anyways. I really would like to serve longer. Yeah,
I'm sure the first year is just figuring out what is going on.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, I've got my feet underneath me, and now, it's time to run again.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty quick turnaround. And speaking of like being open and honest, as I was looking up stuff to get prepared for today, I was kind of looking through your social media, and you do a really good job of just like posting videos after meetings of like, this is what happened, this is what we talked about. And I don't know that I see a whole lot of other people do that. So why do you do that?
I think people just want their electeds to be normal and talk to them like normal people. There's actually he was in the U.S. House, now he's the Attorney General in North Carolina. His name's why can't I remember his name right now? Anyway, the North Carolina Attorney General.
Google it.
Yeah. And he did that during he only served for one term, and then he was redistricted out of his district. And he did that a lot during his term in the U.S. House. And I really admired that, because it does take a bit of vulnerability to just put that out there into the internet. But in general, I think people really appreciate it, and it's making it more available. And we have to do that. We've done not a great job as a city government of communicating with our neighbors, and we need to be more proactive about that.
Yeah, it is vulnerable to do something like that, and also it takes time. I think if you scroll through social media, you see a lot of videos, and they're everywhere, so you assume it takes 1 minute to do. But getting started with this, I have a really deep appreciation for anybody on social media that makes a video.
Yeah.
It's time consuming. You don't usually just start talking to the phone. I mean, maybe you do, maybe it works.
That's usually what I do.
Yeah, well, that's great for you. If I were to do that, we would get like 1 million takes. So
yeah, sometimes I do take a couple of takes. Sometimes I'll prepare, some visuals, but I have not done any editing or anything like that. I haven't figured that out yet. So,
well, that's the way to do it. Less time, just get it out there.
Yeah.
And then, how do you deal with anything you put on social media? You run the risk of people commenting, and especially being in an elected position, people get heated on stuff. Comments that aren't constructive; they're just people venting.
Yeah.
How do you manage those?
Well. I don't know. When I choose to engage in those types of comments, I try to give information, factual information, and then I also make myself available. I have a city-owned cell phone number, and so I will give them that, or I will invite them to, I try to have coffees about once a month that anybody can come out and talk to, and I'll say, hey, I have a coffee coming up next week. I'd love to see you there. I haven't had one person who came and spoke at a meeting a couple of times, and then came to one of my coffees, and we had a good conversation, and he still disagreed with what we did, but he was at least respected that I was willing to talk about it in person. Generally, people they do just want to vent on Facebook, and that's fine. So I try to take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and I think most of the time, if you could just sit down with somebody and actually talk to them, you may not get to a point where you agree, which probably isn't going to happen, but you at least can have a respectful conversation and try to see each other's viewpoints, and that's huge.
Yeah.
Speaking of some things in the media, I guess, and how spun's not the right word, but when you're in a meeting, if you vote no on something, is it possible it comes back up later, or is there ever a situation where you're I don't have enough information, I don't feel comfortable voting yes, so I'm just going to vote no, and then maybe we can bring it back up in 2 weeks? Sometimes.
So I actually wanted to do that when we voted on the common consumption area downtown. We changed our processes. We passed an ordinance earlier this year so that we only have to do one reading of an ordinance to officially change it. We used to have to do two. And so now what we can do is table things and say, hey, let's wait 2 more weeks to get some more information. And when we were talking about the CCA, I had some questions that had come up, and I wasn't comfortable voting on it yet. And I mentioned that I thought we needed to table it, had a little bit more discussion, and then one of the other commissioners made a motion to approve it. I felt that because I had already expressed my desire to table it, and that meant I couldn't support it then, I couldn't vote yes to be, logically sound, to follow that logic. I couldn't vote yes on something that I didn't want to vote on 5 minutes ago. So I voted no on it. It still passed, and I did get the information that I needed. I think it's going to be fine. But sometimes I really try to keep the logic in my head of the things that I've said in a meeting. I'm not always going to get it right, but try to be consistent with those.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was ever a situation where you maybe voted no on something because you just wanted more information or weren't ready to vote on it, and then like a news source or something picks it up and says like, oh, he voted no, he's really against this or that.
That actually, no, I don't think that's come up. I did vote no on the budget last year. Similarly, I just didn't have enough information about the budget. I didn't know what questions I needed to ask. It's really hard. And so then I've had some people ask me, like, why did you vote no on the budget? And it's like, well, I couldn't justify voting yes because I didn't have the right information. So I couldn't support it. And I still stand by that. I'm not going to vote on something that I can't explain why.
Yeah, that makes sense. And shifting gears a little bit, so we've talked at other places, and you've mentioned that you were going to see, her name is Sharon
McMahon, yeah, America's government teacher.
And actually, right before we had that conversation, I saw her book in a bookshelf, so it kind of stuck with me.
Yeah.
That you mentioned that was something that was really impactful to you, the small but mighty, the small and the mighty.
Yeah.
What about that resonates with you, and why is that something that you have?
Well, like the book itself.
Yes.
I think that book is really important because it showcases the ways that what may seem like a small action by one person can actually reverberate to a lot of people and cause a lot of change. There's a story about a school teacher in Virginia who, when the Civil Rights Act was coming in, and Brown versus Board of Education had the Brown v. Board ruling had come down. There were counties in Virginia that just shut down their public schools instead of integrate, and so she was traveling around trying to set up public schools for black kids, and she would talk to anybody. And somebody asked her about it, and she said, I have to be willing to talk to my enemies because at any point in time they may have a change of heart, and I need to be at the table. Mm-hmm. And I think that is such an important story because, again, like you never know when somebody's going to change their mind. Mm-hmm. And again, we are all people trying to figure it out, and there's no playbook for life. So at any point in time, somebody could change their mind, and I don't want to have burned any bridges.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy just in life. Yeah, you may view somebody one way for a long period of time, and then something changes, and either their perception changes or yours does. And if you've done something crazy, then they're never going to want to work with you.
Right.
But if you maintain a nice relationship, you can actually come together and do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a cool perspective. Do you have any other recommendations for other books that you've come across lately?
I just finished reading Poverty by America, and I
have read that one.
I cannot remember the name of the author, but it's really powerful and talks about poverty it really reframes the narrative around poverty and people who are facing that challenge. In that it's not necessarily just a lack of money, but a lack of choice. Mm-hmm. And I think when you consider it that way, things really start to line up and make a lot more sense as to how people can get into the situations they are, and really provides a lot of empathy for folks. Mm-hmm. And I think you got to have empathy for anybody's situation if we're going to try and make anything better.
Yeah, that is a good book. I've also read it and would also recommend that one. Alongside building your career and serving as a city commissioner, you also have a family. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so I have a 9-year-old. He just started 4th grade, and he is a lot, but he's really awesome. He actually was a micro preemie. He was 3 months early. Wow. So and I was in my 2nd semester of college.
Wow.
So finishing up finals and things like that. He was in the NICU. My wife spent 2 months in the 2.5 weeks on bed rest before he was born, because her water broke, and then she went to Topeka, and then he was in the hospital for 3 months.
Wow.
And he's great now. So he's our only one. And then my wife is a local business owner and awesome, and I don't deserve her, but I'm a very lucky person to have her. And we really try to bring out the best in each other. And then, my family still all lives out in Colorado, so get to visit them every once in a while.
Yeah, and your wife makes great pie, so
thank you.
I've tried it and very good. What does Finn think about you as a city commissioner?
Well, I mean, he thinks the meetings and stuff like that are really boring, but
Yeah.
I think he thinks it's pretty cool, like that people know who I am, and that we try to explain about like civic engagement and local leadership and things like that, and we talk about just challenges that we are facing, around the dinner table and stuff. He still thinks it's boring, but try to
He's hanging in there.
Yeah, try to at least teach him the importance of discourse.
Yeah, and you've been in an elected position for about 2 years now. What is one thing you wish more people knew about being in an elected position?
I don't know what I'm doing. None of us know what we're doing.
Yeah, that's so true. Nobody ever knows what they're doing.
Nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just trying our best. Really, that's like we're all trying to do our best. We all have the same goal of making Manhattan the best place it can be.
Yeah.
We have different opinions on how that will work, but we are all trying to do our best.
Yeah. And I have 3 questions that I wrap up every interview with.
Okay.
That we'll shoot off real quick. Do you remember the first time you ever voted?
Yes. I was in Iraq in 2008, and I tried to vote absentee ballot, but I guess my signature didn't match what was on file, so they sent it back.
Oh.
And they were like, in Colorado, I don't think they have a grace period, so it had to be there by election day, and I got it like a few days before election day. So I was like, okay, well, that's...
Yeah, so you voted, but it didn't count.
Yeah. And then I think I was in Korea for the next midterm, and then I did vote in the 2012 absentee, and then switched over to Kansas voting, and I think I voted in every election since then.
Yeah.
So maybe. I don't know that for sure.
Probably. Why is voting important to you?
It's the easiest... most effective way for us to provide guidance, and to participate in government. Not everybody can run, not everybody can volunteer, but everybody can vote. It's should be very easy, and it's once a year, twice a year, sometimes 3, I guess. But it's the least we can do to participate in government.
And where can people find you or reach you?
Yeah, I have Instagram and Facebook, Peter for MHK, or Peter Oppelt for Manhattan. I have a website, peterformhk.com, and I also have my cell phone number is on the city website if you want to call me. I'm not supposed to campaign and do city stuff at the same time, so don't call my city cell about campaign stuff. But if you want to call my city cell about city stuff, you can do that.
Yeah,
it's a very kind of weird thing.
Yeah, business only.
Yeah.
And I'll leave us with, you can follow our social for announcements on new episodes. You can follow us on Instagram at Transparent Campaigns. Facebook is Transparent Campaign Initiative, and you can go to our website for more information on the Manhattan City Commission race at transparentcampaigns.org. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Morgan. I appreciate it.
Yeah.